I love you, Cleveland. And I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan along with Ryan Smith, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It is upon us. Happy Hanukkah, and it's the holiday season, bowl season. We're covering all of the big playoff games. I hope you won't mind if I don't cover Coastal Carolina against Liberty or whatever the matchup is.
Are you telling me, Bruce, that last night you weren't tuned into the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl? Memphis got the win 42-37 over West Virginia. You weren't locked into that?
I'd be more interested in the Scooters Coffee than I would be the game itself.
Fair enough.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm sad, Bruce. I know you're leaving for Florida. I know it's going to be awesome for you. I'm excited for you, but it's going to be lonely here at Burke without you.
You'll live, that's for sure. And indeed, it is the last show that we will be conducting here in our beautiful studios in downtown Cleveland, because my wife is in attendance with me at the taping of today's show. And from here, we're heading down to sunny Florida. Not in just one day, but we're heading down there. And so we'll be conducting the show, as you will see forthcoming, from the beautiful confines of the palm trees and the ocean, etc. But we will be covering all of the bowl games on the show, as well as the playoff games, the first playoff games today, and the NFL. So let's get right to it. Kansas City 21 and Cleveland 7. By the way, Gene Winters will be joining us in segment 2. Gene is my former producer at Fox Sports and Sports Time Ohio. He's an NBA expert, and his favorite sport is baseball. But we're going to be covering both the Cavs, NBA, and all of the off-season baseball hot stove league chit-chat and rumors with Gene in segment number 2. But the first segment, I want to talk about the Browns and the NFL. And believe me, I'm not going to waste much time on the Browns. 21-7, the final score. Our heroes are now 3-11 in this illustriously historic season. 6 turnovers, 3 picks for Winston, 1 for DTR, and 2 fumbles. How wonderful was that? We may have seen the last of Nick Chubb. That was a sad thing for me, Ryan. He broke his foot, and I'm really concerned that we may have seen the last of him. I hate to say this, but, you know, with running backs, it's so common that their longevity is so short compared to the other positions in the NFL, including the guys in the trenches. And it ties in with what I said following the Watson injury. Why not clean house, get what you can for these guys while you can, because by the time you do get a new quarterback, develop a new quarterback, if he does come out of the college ranks, these guys will all be all banged up or injured or retired. And indeed, I hated to see this happen with Chubb, but even when he came back, he wasn't the same guy.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have happened to a worse person, right? Nobody deserved that less than Nick Chubb. And I think contractually it makes sense that he'll still be back next year. I think, you know, the Browns will give him at least that, to give him a chance to have a full offseason and come back. It is a broken foot. I don't want to overblow that, but I mean, it's just another injury, another process of rehabbing that he's going to have to overcome. I think next season could very well be the last season we see Nick Chubb, because after that, I think then it's really going to be a business decision. And I mean, who's to say? I mean, Nick Chubb himself will have the will to come back from yet another injury to be seen.
It's also a scary moment when Myles Garrett got poked in the left eye. It appeared at the time that it was a lot more serious than what it turned out to be. Thank goodness he was okay, because he was able to return. But getting back to the Browns in the bigger picture, unless they get blown out from here on out, the few remaining games, I see Stefanski still being the coach of the team. Barry's another question, though. I you know, are some heads going to roll? We know the owner's not going to roll his own head, so it's got to be somebody, I would think. Could that be Barry, Ryan? I don't know.
I think if I had a hunch that if you keep Stefanski, at least for next year, you're probably keeping Barry. And the criticism for Andrew Barry is more than fair. I understand there's an excuse. You didn't have a plethora of first-round picks, but even then, the other picks, a lot of them have been atrocious. A lot of them have failed to even see the field, right, Bruce? I mean, it's bad. He has not done a great job. But I think if you're going to keep Stefanski, you're probably going to keep Barry next year, and it all comes back to who signed off on this Deshaun deal. Nobody really knows except the people in Berea. But I imagine he'll get another shot here with Stefanski, and after that, I mean, anything's possible.
So is that quarterback in this draft? I mean, is it Sanders? Is it Ward? I certainly wouldn't put money on it that any of those guys are the answer for the future. You didn't know about Brady. You didn't know about Mahomes. So that's fair to point out. But still, to trade up or to be in a position to take this quarterback of the future, it's not exactly like the Browns have a tremendous history of drafting either,
Yeah, and I mean,
no matter who's been in charge of the draft.
And the NFL, I mean, Bruce, the Browns suck, but there are a lot of teams that absolutely suck this season. You're 3-11, and right now you're slotted in at the number 7 pick. So even if Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are the answer for a franchise, the way it looks right now, the Browns aren't even going to have an option to select one of those guys.
Yeah. Well, speaking of injuries, Mahomes hurt his ankle. Carson Wentz actually finished the game. The x-rays were negative, and we'll see if he plays Saturday against Houston. The defending champion Chiefs have now won by 7 points or less in 10 of their 11 victories. So the question is, will that catch up to them in the playoffs? You think so, I know.
I do think so, Bruce.
Philadelphia defeated Pittsburgh 27-13. So the Eagles improved to 12-2. Pittsburgh falls to 10-4. Pittsburgh linebacker T.J. Watt hurt his ankle. He's questionable for the game against Baltimore. That's key. And the Ravens are right on the heels of the Steelers for the divisional crown. Now, if the Ravens beat Pittsburgh this coming Saturday, both teams will be at 10-5 and will have split their 2 games against one another. After Baltimore, Pittsburgh finishes at home against Kansas City. Very tough. At home against Cincinnati. And then, meanwhile, Baltimore plays at Houston and concludes the regular season at home against the Cleveland Browns. What do you like on that game?
I mean, you talk about a big game. This is probably going to determine, obviously, who wins the AFC North. And, I mean, the Ravens just can't get past the Steelers for whatever reason. Lamar Jackson plays some of his worst games against the Steelers. It looks like he's in the playoffs when he plays against the Steelers. That's how bad he is. But, like you said, T.J. Watt, I believe, may be questionable. If they're without him, I mean, that's a game changer. But I have the Steelers winning. I just think they're in the Ravens' head. I mean, you talk about the Browns, they can't beat – you can beat the Ravens and the Steelers, but you can't beat other teams because it's the AFC North. Anything's possible, but – I mean, from what I've seen so far this season, I'll take the Steelers.
I disagree. I think that Baltimore will beat them this weekend, and I think that they will prevail for the divisional crown because Pittsburgh has that game left with, as I mentioned, with Kansas City. So, and then Houston, and then at home against Cincinnati. Not that they'll lose to Cincinnati, but I disagree. I think that Baltimore's going to beat them. Anyway, if they wind up tied, then it comes down to conference record, and I don't know who has a better conference record. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head, but that would be the tiebreaker if it goes to that. Let me move on. As far as Philadelphia is concerned, this win launches them to 12-2 on the season, and into a tie with Detroit at 12-2. And actually, Minnesota's 12-2. Let's not forget them and Sam Darnold. However, Detroit, at least right now, holds the tiebreaker over both of those teams. Now, Buffalo defeated Detroit in what was a great pro game. Great pro game. Was this a preview of the Super Bowl? Maybe. But I cannot believe that Campbell, the head coach of Detroit, chose to try an onside kick even though you now have to declare, by rule, you have to declare if you're going to attempt an onside kick. Now, I don't get it. For the life of me, I don't get it. I think the Detroit fans on their talk shows have just got to be second-guessing him like crazy. Unless he thought he couldn't stop Allen anyway, which he couldn't do up to that point of the game, Ryan, but I still don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, you live by Dan Campbell, you die by Dan Campbell. I don't necessarily agree with some of the decision he makes. I'm sure it drives the analytical people in Detroit absolutely bonkers, but I mean, at some point, Bruce, you got to respect it, right? I mean, it's consistent. It's never just this random flake of boldness, right? It's his method, and I understand it didn't work in the playoffs last year, that blown game to the 49ers, but I mean, we'll see if it comes back to haunt him again this season if they don't get the number 1 seed, but I can't help but respect it.
Don't anybody ever tell me that Goff is average or just not a great quarterback, because he really showed his stuff coming back against Buffalo. Question about Buffalo is their defense is suspect. You can score on that defense. Now, they can outscore just about anybody, but that'll be interesting, too, to see if their defense can step up and win a high-scoring game against an equally high-powered offense. Now, as far as the NFC is concerned, getting back to Detroit and company, the Lions will finish at Chicago against the hapless Bears, at San Francisco against a very underachieving 49ers team this year that's also hobbled with injuries, and then home against Minnesota. Philadelphia will finish up at Washington, home to Dallas, and home to the New York Giants. Maybe the worst team in the NFL. Minnesota will finish up with the toughest of the 3 schedules. They're at Seattle, home to Green Bay, and then at Detroit. So, to me, it looks like Detroit or Philadelphia for sure will get home field advantage in the NFC. But watch out also. Do you have a choice there? I think it still favors the Lions. But it will come down to these last 3 games, no question about it, Ryan.
Yeah, I think it's a lot going to be determined about Saquon Barkley's health. We saw him get rolled over by Minkah Fitzpatrick. I mean, you talk about a player that is so important to their team. I don't think there's a more important player to their team than Saquon Barkley is to the Eagles right now. What he's done this season is just tremendous, and you look at their passing stats, they're not great. I know last week Jalen Hurts had his best game, and the receivers had their best games of the season, but without Saquon Barkley, they become one-dimensional, and that's not going to be good for them. So I'll still take the Lions. I still think they're the best team. I think they have the most talent. I know they have a lot of injuries, maybe the most in the NFL, but there's still 12 games that they've won, and they've just been impressive in every single match this season.
Watch out for the LA Rams. Stafford and company are really finishing strong. And Seattle is now in a position where they can't stumble again. Green Bay just nailed them at home. They can't stumble again. The Rams could be a real tough out in the playoffs for a team they're underdog against in the NFC. And so could Green Bay, for that matter, with Love. I think Green Bay is a threat too, Ryan.
I completely agree with the Rams. Matthew Stafford's playing way more better than he was in the beginning of the season. And listen, Sean McVay has won a Super Bowl. He knows what he's doing. He's one of the best offensive coaches in the league. And Puka Nacua, I think at this point we can say, is probably a top 5 NFL wide receiver, which is crazy, right? But another team to look out for too. I mean, they might not be as talented. They might not have the name recognition, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Bruce, Baker's playing great football on a 4-game win streak, and even the 4-game slide that they had earlier this season, they weren't losing bad. And look what they just did to that Chargers defense, 40 points.
Yeah. Well, I could be wrong about Mayfield, but I can't see them winning the NFC. I just can't see it. And I predicted Atlanta would win that division in the beginning of the season, my divisional predictions, and I believe Tampa Bay finishes up with a game against Atlanta, so that could be very telling as far as the NFC South is concerned. All right, let's shift to college ball and acknowledge congratulations to Travis Hunter of Colorado for winning the Heisman Trophy. I don't think it's a surprise that he got it over the kid from Boise State, Ryan. Question is, should the Browns go after him?
I think they have way more they need to address in the first round. Listen, Ashton Genty's just put on one of the greatest college performances we've ever seen. I still think Travis Hunter deserved the Heisman because he's done something we haven't seen in a very, very long time. That being said, though, first round price for a running back, I mean, you got to nail that, right? That's got to be a Barkley. It has to be a Christian McCaffrey. That's risky, and the Browns can't afford to take any risky moves right now, in my opinion.
The Army-Navy game was staged this past week. I watched the whole thing, and Navy totally outcoached Army's coaching staff. I mean, it was ridiculous. Army depends on that option. They totally shut it down. Navy's offense showed creativity and imagination and actually dominated the game, and Navy's to be congratulated. My wife, Jackie, is in attendance here in the studio. She's sitting right over here. We went to the Army-Navy. Was that 2003? 2003. Which we looked it up, was tied, correct me if I'm wrong here, tied with two other dates of the Army-Navy game as the coldest day in Army-Navy rivalry football Saturday, or whatever day of the week they played on, which is always a Saturday. It was cold. Game was in Philadelphia. But I really was impressed with what Navy did against Army in this game. They totally outcoached the Army staff. All right, let's get to the big games now. The first one is going to be the Battle of the Hoosier State, as Indiana will play at South Bend against the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Indiana is the number 10 seed. They're 11-1. They were 9-3 against the spread this year. Notre Dame was 11-1, and they were 10-2 against the spread this year. They're number 7 seed. The Irish at home in South Bend are a 7-point favorite. Indiana's only loss, of course, was to Ohio State. Kirk Cignetti, who is the coach of Indiana, formerly at James Madison, has done a marvelous job. Indiana had never won 10 games in a season until this year, and Indiana hasn't won a bowl game since 1991. And they have only 2 Big Ten titles, 1945 and 1967. That was when Lee Corso was there. As far as Notre Dame is concerned, their only loss was to Northern Illinois in South Bend. Indiana's high-scoring offense, and I mean high-scoring. This is Indiana. They have scored in victories 31, 77, 42, 52, 42, 41, 56, 31, 47, and 66 in their last game against Purdue. But that offense has really struggled against the two teams who feature a very good defense. Ohio State, who beat Indiana, where Indiana scored only 15 points, and Michigan. Indiana prevailed in that game, but they only scored 20. And Notre Dame has a very good defense. I like Notre Dame in this game, Ryan. The winner will play Georgia.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame as well. I think Kurt Cignetti has done a tremendous job there in Indiana in his first year. And I understand it's 12 teams now, but getting to the playoff, I mean, that's still a cause for celebration. It seems like they found their guy for hopefully at least the next 5-10 years. You know how college works. But, I mean, I can't pick them to beat Notre Dame. I understand they lost to NIU, and that's a blip, a huge blip. And, in fact, if Ryan Day did that, he wouldn't be here right now probably. But I can't pick them to beat Notre Dame.
I like Notre Dame to cover, too. SMU was 11-2. They're the number 11 seed. They were 8-5 against the spread. They're at Penn State and Happy Valley against the Nittany Lions, the number 6 seed, who won 11-2 on the season, but 6-7 against the spread. And the Nittany Lions are an 8.5-point favorite. Now, SMU was picked to finish 7th in their first year in the ACC. The Mustangs' only losses were by a combined 6 points two losses by a combined 6 points. BYU beat them early in the year, 18-15, and then Clemson beat them 34-31 in the championship game, the ACC championship game. SMU averages 38.5 points per game. Penn State averages 33.6 points per game. Penn State's only two losses were to Ohio State and Oregon, and losing by 7 to Ohio State and 8 to the Ducks. Head coach James Franklin, though, is under pressure to prove that he can beat a ranked team, let alone a highly ranked team, in a big, big game. This is only the third meeting between these two schools. 13-13 tie way, way back in 1948 in the Cotton Bowl. And 26-21 Penn State victory at home in 1978. The winner will earn the right to play Boise State. I like SMU in this game, plus the points, with a great chance to win this game outright. Obviously, the weather will be a factor. It's going to be in the 20s. There's a chance of snow, but the same conditions are for Penn State. You know, it's not like Penn State is used to playing a home game in late December, so it's going to be just as miserable for them. Franklin's got to prove to me, Ryan, that he can win a big game.
Yeah, I'll still take Penn State to win, but the exact reason I am cautious is exactly because of James Franklin. I don't think he's a good coach by any stretch of the measure. I'm surprised he's still in Penn State. I understand that that's not necessarily an Ohio State where you're going to attract this top-tier coach, and again, I mean, Drew Allar is decent, but I can't remember the last Penn State quarterback that's really wowed me, and Drew Allar isn't an exception to that rule. But I'll still take him to win because they're at home, but I wouldn't be shocked at all, Bruce, if SMU won this game.
Clemson's the number 12 seed, and they are 10-3. They are 6-7 against the spread, and they play in Austin against the Longhorns, the number 5 seed, 11-2, and 7-6 against the spread. Clemson's 3 losses, they were routed by Georgia. They lost to Louisville and South Carolina. Both those games they lost at home.
Yeah.
Both Texas's losses were to Georgia. Texas should, and I believe will, win this game, but that's a lot of points, 12 points, in a game of this magnitude, and especially in a game that Dabo Swinney is used to preparing his team for. The winner will play Arizona State. I think Texas wins, but that's a lot of points to give up, Ryan.
Yeah, it is a lot of points. I'd still probably take Texas the points. I mean, Clemson got in on just because they won the ACC. I get it, but I think Texas is a much better team. Dabo's kind of lost in the new college football generation that we're in. I think it's starting to catch up to him. I don't really think they should be in the playoff, but they are. I'll take Texas to win this one easily.
That brings us to Tennessee visiting Columbus and Ohio State on Saturday night. Tennessee's the number 9 seed. They went 10-2 in the season. They were 7-5 against the spread. The Buckeyes 10-2, the number 8 seed, 6-6 only against the spread. Buckeyes are a 7.5-point favorite. Tennessee's only 2 losses were to Arkansas on the road. They lost 19-14, and to Georgia, 31-17. That was a road game as well. They did beat Alabama. Ohio State. What does this say? The athletic department at Ohio State is asking fans not to sell tickets to Tennessee fans, despite the frustration over yet another Ryan Day loss to Michigan. Now, let's face it, this game is do or die for Day. I've already predicted that in order for Day to keep his job, he must get to the national championship game. And he better not get blown out. Even if they do get to the national championship game and they get blown out, I think he's through. But Ohio State's offensive line is decimated with injuries, and the Tennessee defense allows only 99 yards rushing per game. That ranks 8th nationally, and their defense ranks 9th overall, or 4th, I beg your pardon, 4th overall in total defense. 2 things, though, in Ohio State's favor. The passing game to the great, talented receivers of the Buckeyes. But hopefully Day and Kelly have learned their lesson from the Michigan game when they did not get the ball after that early pick, after Howard threw that pick, they stopped throwing to the flat. Now, hopefully they learn their lesson and they'll get the ball in the hands of these incredibly talented receivers in open field where they can do some damage. If not, I mean, just even if they win, you got to question Day and Kelly's thinking because you've got all this talent and you're not utilizing it. Now, the other thing in Ohio State's favor is the weather, and it's supposed to be like 28 degrees, so that's in the Buckeyes' favor as well. The winner will play Oregon. That would be the third time the Buckeyes would play Oregon, which is another topic we've already discussed here on the show as far as the flaw with this format. But all the pressure in the world's on Ohio State. I think they will probably find a way to win this game, but I certainly wouldn't give Tennessee 7.5 points. I don't care what the weather is.
Yeah, I mean, just like the Michigan game, Ohio State has absolutely no reason to lose this. You're at home in the shoe, right? I mean, they're a good team. They got a freshman quarterback, for crying out loud. If Ryan Day can't pull this one off, I think he certainly can, no doubt about it. And, listen, Ohio State, one of the, I believe, either the best or the second best preseason odds to go win the national championship. You talked about it before the season. You said it was championship or bust. You got $25 million in NIL on this team, plenty of transfers. If they lose this game, Bruce,
adios.
I won't be sad. Don't get me wrong. I won't be sad. I'll be laughing from my couch, but I know a lot of fans, a lot of my friends will be very disappointed.
When we come back, Gene Winters will join us, talk about the Cavs, NBA, and Hot Stove League baseball next. Bonus time with Drennan. Big Play Sports Network. I love you, Menor Nissan. Hi, Bruce Drennan here for my good friends at Menor Nissan, Race Minchak and his entire staff out there. Absolutely adore my two Nissan Rogues. Used to have a Murano. That Murano was fantastic. Looking forward to taking my Rogue down to Florida. Got the overhead because the rack's on top. I had that inserted in this last Rogue that I got. Check out the all-new 2025 Murano. The all-new 2025 Nissan Kicks. They're talking a lot about that vehicle, that's for sure. Also, Nissan sedans, crossovers, SUVs, trucks, electric. They got it all. Get on out to the dealership and test drive. They encourage you to come on out and test drive any of the great vehicles. But the Nissan Rogue has the intelligent forward collision warning. It's great. If you're looking somewhere else or dozing off, or if you're stupid enough to be doing that thing on your phone, it's got that warning for you to get alert and be aware. And, of course, you'll find a third-generation family-owned and operated company in Menor Nissan, focusing on the high level of customer care and service and a pillar in the local community. Visit MenorNissan.com. That's MenorNissan.com. Obviously, I strongly recommend Menor Nissan. MenorNissan.com. Love you, Menor Nissan. All right, joining us now is Gene Winters, my former producer at Sports Time Ohio, Fox Sports, Bally's. Now it's FanDuel. Gene, for the last several years, has been the statistical graphic designer for the Cavs telecasts, and he's an NBA expert. We're going to talk some baseball, too, because that's his favorite sport, ironically. A little bit later, we happen to be in the same fantasy baseball league. Merry Christmas, Gino. How you doing?
Yeah, same to you. Thank you. Yeah, everything's going well. This season has started out a little bit different than what I was expecting, but it's been a fun run so far, and it takes us right into this holiday season.
Some things never change. You anticipated my very first question. Who could have expected at the start of this season the Cavs to get off to this kind of a start and be the top team in the NBA? They have the best record in the NBA. Who would have thought that?
Zero people. I mean, everyone will say, "Oh yeah, I can see this coming," but they're all lying. There's no way that this anyone was expecting this. I mean, for Kenny Atkinson to come in, kind of change the culture, get everyone to buy into his scheme, has been a godsend for this team. When we talked last year after the season was over, I thought for sure JB was gone, which happened. But I thought the next part of it was they were going to break up that core four. And the first thing Kenny did was make sure that those four were happy, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan, and Darius Garland, that they can work together. He met with each one of them individually, and keeping them together has been the best thing for this team, as obviously, as you mentioned, off to the best record in the NBA, out to one of the best starts in franchise history at 15-0. I mean, for Kenny Atkinson, no Cavs coach in their first year won their first 2 games to start a season. He went 15-0, and where they're at now with over 20 wins already and sitting atop of the Eastern Conference.
Now, he deserves all the credit in the world, Atkinson does, but what do you think the key to his success with these 4 guys has been? Because obviously we haven't seen this kind of chemistry, and they're just gelling splendidly together, and that's above and beyond the other players, which I want to get into, especially the bench and how they've contributed. But the chemistry with these 4 has just been off the charts.
No doubt. And like I said, he wanted to meet with each one of them individually. I mean, he was the assistant coach for Team France. So he was going back and forth from the Olympics, coming back to the States, going back over, coming back. So, he put a lot of mileage into this off season, trying to get himself prepared, get the team prepared, and get those 4 the expectations that he wanted out of them. I think we're seeing it. I mean, Donovan Mitchell's playing a couple less minutes than what he has been. He's not having to carry the load. Each night, it seems like a different person is leading the team in scoring. And it's not just those 4. You're getting contributions off the bench, and they're leading the team in scoring. So for him to get them to first buy in, the other part of it, they're playing a little bit quicker than what they did under JB Bickerstaff. The pace has picked up a little bit. They're getting up and down the floor, having a little bit more fun playing. I don't want to say like backyard basketball, but not trying to run play after play after play. If you see something, you improvise a little bit and get that offense going. And I think they've bought in. And when you're scoring 120 points a night, it makes it fun for the team.
Is it for real? It does appear like this is the coming out year for Mobley.
Oh, absolutely. He had the little setback with the ankle twist a couple games ago, but luckily the Cavs had that break because of the NBA Cup. So they basically had a week off for him to rest up a little bit. I think so. They try to feature him early, get him involved early, get him going offensively. Had a 41-point game earlier this year against Charlotte, the best game that he had. He's one of 3 players this season to score 40, pull down 10 rebounds, and hit 5 or more 3-pointers in a game. Joins Luka and Karl Anthony Towns. So what he's been able to do offensively has been amazing for this team to again, take the load off of Donovan where he doesn't have to take over, or a Darius Garland or Jared Allen, who, he picks and chooses, it seems, what games, he has that offensive performance. But the other part for Mobley is his defense, again, has been phenomenal. The 2 years ago was second in defensive player of the year voting. He just continues to excel on that side as well. Just being a young, long 4 has really helped this team.
Also, Atkinson is using the whole bench, and he's incorporating all these guys, getting them plenty of minutes, not out of necessity necessarily with injuries to other guys, but they're all gelling together. Merrill, LeVert, Wade, Niang, Strus hasn't even played, and right. Jerome has made a big difference too.
Yeah, you go back to it. During that run that the Cavaliers had, Ty was the one carrying the bench, giving you that production that maybe you weren't expecting. And then as he started to settle in, as you mentioned, Niang comes in with the 20-point game, or Dean Wade, now that he's coming off the bench, has been able to do it both offensively and defensively. Karis LeVert, again, should have been, I thought, higher in 6th man of the year voting last year. He, again, it seems like every night he's 10-plus points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, distributing the ball well. He's shooting the 3-point ball extremely well this season. And that's the part with this bench. Any of those guys that you plug in could come in and hit the shot. At one point, I think it was before last game on against Brooklyn on Monday, the Cavaliers starters, I think they were like 26th in minutes played this season, where the bench was up to 6, which is something you don't see often. A lot of teams ride their starters, and we saw that with JB Bickerstaff, where he went to those small 6, 7, 8-man rotations, and you're just pounding the starters, almost into the ground where their legs are dead by the time the season comes to an end. This year, it's been a great balance where Kenny Atkinson hasn't had to do that yet because of the trust in the bench going to it and it coming out and performing.
And Okoro has he's really blossomed too. This is what they anticipated when they drafted him.
Yeah, right. And we always knew that he was a defensive guy, and we continue to see that when he's out there, able to slow down the other team's best shooter. But offensively, it is starting to come around. As of Monday, he was third in the NBA in 3-point field goal percentage. So those numbers continue to go up each year. I just did a thing on Monday where I think his rookie year, he was 29% 3-point shooting. He's up to 49 going into that game on Monday.
Wow.
So, the way he's continuing to improve each year, his defense is going to be there as he continues to work on that offensively. It just gives the Cavs another option in that starting lineup.
Do you hear any rumors with the trade deadline, of course, coming up once we get into the new year? Do you see the Cavs? Do they need to make any moves?
Right. At this point, when you're the best team in the NBA, I mean, you have 4 losses all year. You're off to one of the best starts in franchise history, tying through the first 27 games with that 08-09 team, the one that ended up losing to the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference Finals. You would think that there's probably room for improvement somewhere, but when you look and watch these games, it's like, who are you going to take out of the rotation? You're already 10 deep. Are you going to be able to factor in another player if you go out and make a move? Obviously, the Cavs are always looking for another 3. Okoro was hurt for a little bit this season, a little bit earlier, but as we just talked about, he's continuing to develop. Dean Wade went into that starting lineup and was a starter to start this season, but he's more of in my opinion, more of a role player for this team, a guy that can come in, hit a couple of threes, get hot. So, you might want to find another defensive guy to help slow the other team down if you get into that mix. But again, with this depth that they have right now, it's going to be hard to work in another player. I guess that's why you have 2 more months to play out before the deadline and see if any injuries or anything happen where you have to go out or are forced to make a move.
Friday's the next game for the Cavs against Milwaukee, hosting Milwaukee, who just won the NBA Cup, whatever that is. And then Philadelphia on Saturday. Go Cavs. I want to switch to baseball because obviously your favorite subject and mine too. Very happy that the Guardians extended and Bieber agreed to the extension, franchise-friendly contract, even though he won't be available till midseason. So what? Cole wasn't available to the Yankees until the All-Star break. I thought it was an excellent move. Hedges for clubhouse purposes and great defensive reasons, but I was really caught off guard by the Jimenez trade.
Yeah, that one got me too. And then, I liked at first what they were getting back from the Blue Jays, and then it was, shot right off again. I guess, again, the Guardians are very good at finding great pitching talent and being able to continue to develop it. So if you're getting the 6th, 7th highest rated pitching prospect from the Pirates, there is something there that you can plug in, and maybe he bridges that gap a little bit until Bieber comes back in July and can carry this rotation again. But that's the one thing that the Guardians have been good at: finding, identifying, and developing pitchers. So on that part, I like it, but now you have that hole defensively. Sure, the Jimenez numbers offensively have gone down since he's been here, but what he does defensively, saving you runs, making amazing plays defensively, being an all-star, all that stuff plays a huge factor.
It does, but you can't, with the extension to his contract, can you afford to pay that kind of money just for gold glove defense with no offense? Because his offensive production from 2022, where he hit 297 with 17 homers, 69 RBIs, 26 doubles, he's become a 250 hitter, and his OPS is below average. I think Brito's probably the guy who's a real good stick in the minors. Yeah. That's the minors. But real good stick. I think he fills the gap until this Bazana is ready, the kid they drafted. In Ortiz, though, they got to, I think that Chernoff and Antonetti were just wowed by his performance against the Guardians last season in interleague play when he came into Cleveland and he threw 6 shutout innings, 1 hit ball. Right. Yeah, so, I mean, it adds to the pitching rotation until Bieber is ready, but I think it looks, and they might not be done. They could always get a veteran second baseman. But I got to get to a couple other subjects with what time allows. Gene, how about the Soto deal?
I know. You keep reading the rumors before he ended up signing. It's like, oh, we'll get to 500, we'll get to 600, we'll get to 700. And then what Ohtani did last year, and you think, okay, great. I mean, Ohtani signed his deal and put up a fantastic MVP season, the 50-50 season with the stolen bases and the home runs. Now Soto's going to have to go and match that for him to go to the crosstown rival of the Mets, from the Yankees to the Mets. He's going to have to continue to put up huge numbers to live up to that contract. But again, if you have all your out clauses, but to be able to just print that money at 15 years, 750, I mean, it's amazing what some of the contracts have been this year.
But, looking at Mets getting this incredible talent in Soto, they still, if they don't re-sign Alonso, all Soto does is replace the numbers of Alonso. Yeah. I don't know how that makes them that much better offensively.
Right. And you're going to have to go out and get pitching at some point. Yes, Lindor had a fantastic year last year, especially in that second half. But that hasn't been the norm for him either. So will he drop back down to where he was the last couple of seasons, or will he continue to take off from what he built on that second half? And again, sure, you can outslug teams 10-9, but when it comes down to it, once you get into the playoffs, we all know pitching is the answer. Are they going to be able to do it and shut an opposing lineup down in that National League to get to their ultimate goal of the World Series?
Now, rumor has it that Bregman, the Yankees want him. Boston, New York Mets are the leading candidates. Detroit and Toronto, a little bit of interest. Corbin Burns, San Francisco, showing interest. Yeah. Seattle's after Christian Walker. Arenado to Houston because of the void to Bregman. But there's still some big names out there, Gene.
Yeah, the two third basemen are the ones that intrigue me the most, because both of them, Bregman obviously a little bit younger than Arenado, but he's been a staple for so many years, from coming from Colorado over to St. Louis, locking down, playing a very good defense, even to the point where he's at now. His defensive numbers have still been fairly good, where he's putting up 20 home runs. It's not that 30, 40 that you expect every year. So, where does he land? Bregman, if he comes over to the Tigers, is intriguing to reunite with AJ Hinch. But again, if you're going to get Yankees money or Red Sox money, I'm sure you're going to take that over those two. And Corbin Burns, that's a guy that I like since he was in Milwaukee, obviously last year with the O's. If he goes out to San Francisco, that could be a nice piece for them. But again, will that be enough to get you over top of the Dodgers?
No.
Probably not. I mean, you're still fighting for third or fourth.
Especially when they went out and got Blake Snell. They got Snell. Yeah. The team, I think, and I'm sure New Yorkers, Yankee fans would disagree. I think the team that did the best so far, and we got a long way to go until spring training, I think the team that did the best so far was New York, the Yankees, because even though they lost Soto, they make this trade and they get Cody Bellinger, whose offensive numbers will be, very comparable. Maybe not Soto type numbers, but they'll be very good in filling that void. And then they go out and they get Max Fried to back up Cole. Fried in a Yankee could be tremendous for them. And then Williams, the reliever from Milwaukee. I mean, three real key pieces they went out and got.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the one, William, the closer, at least being able to stabilize that bullpen, because they ran through and cycled through, Clay Holmes and a number of guys last year trying to find that right piece to be their back of the end bullpen piece. Now you get that, bringing in Devin Williams. He can now be that piece. He's performed well in that closer's role, and even as the setup guy when he was setting up Hader for so many years with the Brewers. So that's the part, as you mentioned. Bellinger had a very good back-to-back seasons with the Cubs. He can fill that void in right field, but you could also move him into first base when you need it to fill into that spot as well. And you mentioned Max Fried. I mean, to get him at a 7-year deal, it's just phenomenal what they were able to do. And Max Fried is one of those guys that continues to grow each and every year, and being through that Brave system.
And he was hurt last year too.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of Cleveland fans may not be familiar with Fried because he's been exclusively with Atlanta. Yeah. But this guy, to me, he's like a left-handed Bieber myself, Gene. Would you agree?
Sure. No doubt. You just plug him in, and it's not like, coming to the AL East will throw him off. I mean, the National League East has been a gauntlet for the last couple of years trying to get through some of those lineups. So you just plug him
No
right
question.
in, put him either right behind Cole, and that's one of the deadliest 1-2 punches you'll see around baseball.
Well, best to you and your family. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Keep up the great work, and I'm heading to Florida, as you well know. We will be contacting you here while I'm down there to feature you again. Keep us up to date on the Cavs, and also continuing with this hot stove league chit-chat. There's going to be a lot more to talk about in baseball before spring training, Gene.
Yeah, no doubt. Again, thanks for having me. Safe travels as always. Getting down to Florida, and enjoy the multiple golf courses that you'll be seeing over the next 3 months.
Thanks, Gino. Gene Winters of FanDuel Sports, the statistical graphic designer for the Cavaliers and baseball aficionado. So, okay, we'll be back. Ask Bruce segments next on Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Programming reminder, no show next week on Christmas Day, but we will do a show 2 weeks from now on New Year's Day. Too much college and pro football to talk about, so keep that in mind. No show on Christmas Day, but we will do a show on New Year's Day. Fire away, Ask Bruce segment.
Alrighty, this one's from our guy Andy. He says, Merry Christmas, Bruce. If the Browns hierarchy had more patience with Baker Mayfield, do you think he would have developed into the quarterback he's become in Tampa Bay?
Oh, hypotheticals. Who am I to say? I, as you know, was not an advocate of Mayfield. I've admitted to you, I could be very wrong about him. He has certainly done a tremendous job in Tampa Bay, and he's continuing to do a good job. We'll see how far he can carry them this year. I don't think they can win the NFC, but I could be wrong. But who knows if he would have stayed in Cleveland. Oh, my. But to look at how much worse off could we be if we kept him rather than the dilemma we find ourselves in again? As I said, if the Watson thing fails, it sets the franchise back at least 5 years. At least.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, does Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting Sunday against the Bengals make you any more interested in watching our Cleveland Browns?
No, absolutely not. He would have been starting right after Watson got hurt if the Browns thought that he was the quarterback of the future. Come on. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. And most importantly, they know it.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, Bill Belichick and now Michael Vick are headed to be coaches in the college ranks. Do you see this pattern of NFL, quote, legends joining the college ranks continuing?
I can't get over Belichick taking that job at North Carolina for the life of me. That just blows my mind. Unless there's a little tiny clause in there that his son is the heir apparent when he does hang it up. I just don't get it. But it's going to be, and you know what? I wouldn't be surprised with the NIL and with Portal that he doesn't make North Carolina a playoff contender immediately next season. You watch.
Alrighty, Bruce, if you had to take a pick, what does your gut say? Did Nick Chubb play his last snap of football in a Cleveland Brown uniform?
I'm so fearful of that, and I'm so saddened by it. Even if he does come back, how can he be anything close to what he was when he came out of Georgia, where he sustained his first major injury? It was a knee injury in Georgia. Then he re-injured the knee here in Cleveland, and now he's got the broken foot. I pray for the guy. I've always loved him. He's been a wonderful human being and person and a leader on and off the field for this franchise since he put on a Browns uniform. Love him. I hate to see this.
All right, hey, Bruce, flipping over to baseball now. Do you think the Guardians will use the money they recouped from the Jimenez trade internally for extensions, or do you see them going out in free agency and making some moves there?
Well, I think that they may not be done. I don't see any need to add to the bullpen because we're so loaded, even in the minors. We've got guys that will be coming back from injuries and guys in the minors that are major league ready. I don't think the pen needs to be bolstered at all. Obviously, you with the audition of Ortiz to go along with Bybee and Gavin Williams and Lively, maybe Logan Allen and McKenzie can bounce back after disappointing 2024 seasons for them. But I don't know unless they get a stopgap at second base until this Bazzana's ready. But certainly there's money there that has been freed because of the Jimenez deal.
Alrighty, last one, Bruce. If the Guardians don't announce a Steven Kwan extension by the beginning of next season, do you think fans should be worried that Kwan will no longer be a Guardian in the distant future?
Tying in with the previous question about an extension, if anything, you give Kwan an extension and try to keep him because he's the prototypical leadoff man. Everybody loves him. He's a tough guy to strike out. He makes contact. He gets on base. He steals bases. He runs the bases splendidly. He's a Golden Glove outfielder. So and a great team leader. So we got to keep him. That's for sure. And unfortunately, we can't keep doing this because we're out of time. I want to wish all of you, your family, friends, very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah. Again, no show next week on Christmas Day. We will be back with you on New Year's Day. So be looking forward to talking about all the football when we do return in a couple of weeks. I'm Bruce Drennan on behalf of Ryan Smith. Hope you enjoyed today's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. You have a good one. Be safe. And until the next time, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio. And I love you, Cleveland.